All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Classic Comic live stream. Okay, so several things I've got on the plate here. So we'll just go ahead and get into it. Now, the first thing I wanted to take a look at was the Daredevil trailer, which came out this week. That's, I guess, one of the big sort of stories of note. Now, I'm not going to play the trailer, because copyright and all that. I'll stop and start it. I'm assuming most of you probably have already seen it anyway. So is it coming up here? Okay. So now this seems to be combining a couple of different storylines. Now, this doesn't seem to really have anything to do with the actual comic book storyline of Born Again. There was an actual Daredevil story called Born Again. This doesn't really seem to have anything to do with that. This is borrowing from at least a couple of other stories, it seems like, particularly the whole Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, becomes mayor story. And here we see them in this meeting here in this diner, chit-chatting. Now they talk about, Fisk asks Murdoch why he stopped being a vigilante. And Daredevil says, or Matt Murdoch says, that a line was crossed. Of course, they don't get specific. Now, as I understand it, of course, this thing's been largely redone. They had originally had filmed, I think, a lot of this. But then I believe it was during maybe the strikes or during the break, I think they took the opportunity to kind of rework this thing and kind of change it up. And because originally the characters of Karen and Foggy were not going to be in this, they weren't even going to appear. But the thing was rewritten and they were brought back. And as I understand it, what happens is they're going to be in like the first couple to maybe 3 episodes. And then there's going to be kind of a time jump. They're going to jump ahead several years. And we come back, after the time jump, Murdoch's not Daredevil anymore. So I'm assuming that at least one of these characters, Foggy or Karen, is probably going to be killed. And I don't know who it is, but my money would be on Foggy, probably, considering how Hollywood is with female characters these days. I find it hard to believe they'll kill the female character off. So I'm guessing something happens and maybe Murdoch accidentally causes Foggy's death or fails to save him or something like that. And because of that, he gives up being Daredevil. And then after those first few episodes and then the time jump, these characters aren't going to appear anymore. So they're kind of selling this up front as like, it's kind of, oh, we're getting back to the old Netflix show, but not really, just for the first maybe couple episodes. And then it's going to be a different thing. And then, of course, Matt mentions Wilson Fisk becoming mayor. And this was a storyline that was done several years ago in the comics. And, it was, of course, very fashionable in comics, the comics world back, 6, 7, 8 years ago, to do basically anti-Trump stories. And that's what this was. It was basically him running as mayor, and he was an obvious sort of Trump allegory. Hopefully they won't beat us over the head with that too badly or too heavily, but we'll see. And of course, Murdoch expresses his concerns. He's, like, I find it hard to trust you. What are you really up to? And of course, there's this one line where Fisk says, well, a mayor serves his city. Kind of funny if we see this show, and Fisk is actually like a better mayor than what's her name over in Los Angeles, what Karen Bass. That would be kind of funny. Now, another part of this story is that Bullseye is coming back. And we got this woman. I'm not sure who this is, but apparently Murdoch and her are going to be involved, apparently. And this guy, this killer. Now, I haven't read this storyline. This is a character that appeared in Daredevil a few years back. I for Blind Spot, I think his name is. Um, I don't really know much about him because I haven't read the story. So they're borrowing from that storyline, and then the Punisher, he's coming back. I'm not sure how much of a role he's going to have in this. And where is. And this was a cool shot, this one here with all the different masks, showing that he's actually got several costumes, presumably, because he has had a number of costumes in the comics. So, like, that's this one, which in the comics, this was his original, the red and gold one. Then, like, a standard red one. Then there's, I think this is kind of the grayish one, gray and red one from. He had a costume briefly in the 90s that was kind of gray with red. And then I believe that's a black one from like his Shadowlands costume. I'm not sure about that one. Maybe just a darker red. And I don't know where is Bullseye in here. I don't know. Oh yeah, White Tiger. So White Tiger is going to be in this, which I'm kind of excited to see. White Tiger is kind of a character I've liked. Um, Sadly, I saw that I guess recently the actor, I forget the actor's name, but the actor that played White Tiger, he passed away recently. It's kind of sad to hear. And Bullseye is in this somewhere. I swear I'm not seeing him. His costume is terrible, though. He doesn't have the proper costume. But I am hoping that this is going to be good. You know, oh, there he is. He's out of costume. Where is he here? There he is. There's Bullseye. And he has a costume, but it's not good. It looks nothing like his comic suit. It's really kind of crappy looking. And this actor, God, I forget his name now, but the guy that plays Bullseye, you know, he was pretty good as Bullseye in the Netflix show. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. This is the guy that should have played Hawkeye, in my opinion. He really should have been Hawkeye. I think he'd be a much better Hawkeye than Jeremy Renner. Jeremy Renner's fine, but he's not really the comic book Hawkeye. He's a different character. And I would much prefer, I think this guy had kind of the swagger and kind of the cockiness that that character should have. But I think the general sense is that this has been well received. But you know, it's basically everyone's just kind of like, please be good. You know, we've been burned so many times. There's been so many lackluster Marvel streaming shows. So people are just hoping this thing is not crap. As you can see from the trailer, it seems to be pretty violent, and the Netflix show was pretty brutal, pretty violent. So this is probably going to be the most violent show that they've done for the MCU so far. And you know, just getting away from the cheesy humor and all that will be a welcome change. So yeah, fingers crossed that this will be good. We'll see. Okay. All right, now we'll move on to the next thing here. So let's just take a look at the upcoming slate of films for 2025. And I'm just going to kind of talk about my what's coming out and kind of the interest level. Because there's, as has been the case for the last few years, arguably several years. There's not a whole lot I'm really that excited to see. Okay, so starting in January. So January 10th, we got Den of Thieves, uh, Pantera, which is a sequel to that Den of Thieves movie. I've never seen that. It looked pretty good, actually, Den of Thieves, and I thought about seeing that in the theater, but I just never got around to it. Uh, Back in Action. This is, I think, a Netflix thing with Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx. No interest in that. Wolfman, that is now out. That seems to be getting very, I'll just say, mixed reviews. If the images of the Wolfman that I've seen are the ones I'm thinking of, then this looks like it's probably bad. It's done by the guy that did that Invisible Man movie from a few years back. And I didn't really see that because, in the press stuff leading up to it, of course, it was all about how the movie was about toxic masculinity and all this stuff. And I was just like, okay, pass. And they haven't said that for this movie, which I think is telling, but I'm going to guess it's probably more of the same. And yeah, I'm just not that excited, not that interested. Flight Risk with Mark Wahlberg. Don't really know what that is. No interest there, really. Cordially Invited with Reese Witherspoon and Will Ferrell. No, not interested. And January 31st, Companion, a psychological thriller with Jack Quaid. I think, isn't this the one where he's got like a robot girlfriend? I think that might be interesting. I don't know that I'd actually go see it or not, but I don't know. If I were bored enough, I might give it a shot. Okay, February 5th. Let me increase this a little. There we go. Uh, so kind of pregnant. Amy Schumer rom-com. No. Love Hurts, action comedy with Kei Hui Kwan. Okay, I've seen trailers for this. And this is one of those movies, there's been a trend in action movies in recent years where they take people who are not your traditional kind of action hero types and putting them in movies, like that. Those movies, was it Nobody with, oh, what's his face? Um, oh, good Lord. Guy that, I'm blanking on his name now, but the comedic actor, he played Saul Goodman on Breaking Bad. I swear I'm blanking on his name now, but he was in those movies. And this seems to be kind of in the same vein where you take a guy who's kind of unassuming and not like a traditional kind of action hero and puts him in an action hero thing. Kind of seems like it's a similar thing as Nobody, where he's like a former mobster or criminal or something like that. And of course, people from his old life kind of come back and then he has to kind of kick ass or whatever. I don't know. I'm not really that excited about it. The Witcher Sirens of the Deep animated Witcher adaptation. No. Bridget Jones sequel. No. Okay, Captain America Brave New World, the first really big kind of tentpole movie of the year. Now, just to be clear, I don't think this movie is going to be a big hit. This movie will probably fail. Hey, Gwagnar. Bob Odenkirk. Yes, that's his darn name. Yeah, I can't believe I blanked on that. Thank you. I swear I used to watch that guy on Mr. Show and on the Ben Stiller show back in the friggin' 90s. So I've been watching that guy for years. I can't believe I blanked on his name. Mr. Show was hilarious. But yeah, so Captain America Brave New World. But I do think this thing is probably going to have a better opening maybe than people are expecting. Now, I think the last I saw, the projections were, well, that were announced were something like 85 to 95 million, somewhere in there, right? But then there were maybe later I heard they were maybe kind of looking at maybe it's going to be more like 70 million or something like that. Now, I think this thing could maybe open better than people think it will, at least in the opening weekend, because by the time this comes out, I think a lot of folks are just going to kind of be starved for something to see. Because I mean, like I said, if you looked at January, not a lot there. Not a lot, particularly if like you're a guy and there's you want some big action movie. I mean, the closest we get is what Den of Thieves, I guess, or maybe Flight Risk, whatever that is. But I've heard no buzz about those movies. It doesn't seem like people are really excited for it. I'm not sure if people really even know they're coming. Same with that Love Hurts thing. So I think the fact that this is just going to come out when there is no, there hasn't been any kind of big release for, probably before that, the last big release would be Nosferatu, which was on Christmas Day. So you're talking close to 2 months without a really big notable release. And also, I think this will be shortly after the Super Bowl. I think because I think the Super Bowl is on the 9th, right? Yeah, it's on the 9th. So this is like the following Friday. So there's not going to be a lot in terms of sports because you've got the NBA and the NHL, but they're both kind of in mid-season, so it's not like they're in the playoffs or anything. College basketball is just getting started. So not much competition there. That's just what I think. There's people will be bored and it's not going to have a lot of competition. So I think it may actually do fairly decent and open fairly well the first weekend. However, after that, it's probably going to drop pretty steeply, pretty quick. And Guagnar says it will have to do Avatar numbers in order to make back its budget. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing's going to lose money. I mean, it's going to lose money. I don't think there's any questioning that because, like you say, it's going to have to pretty much between the budget and the marketing and all. It's pretty much going to have to make $1 billion just to break even. And how many Marvel movies have done that, particularly since or post Endgame, let's say post Endgame and post pandemic and all that. Basically, the only ones that have been No Way Home, the Spider-Man movie, which of course had 3 Spider-Men in it, and that kind of nostalgia hit to kind of get people excited and put them in the theater. And that was also a co-production with Sony, not a straight up Marvel movie like this. And then Deadpool and Wolverine, which also broke $1 billion this past summer. But again, it's kind of the same thing. They brought back Hugh Jackman. And again, it was actually a 20th Century Fox movie, really not a straight up Marvel movie. So, and this movie is a straight up Marvel film, and they don't have any beloved actor coming back into a role to help put butts in seats. So I just don't see it happening. It may do, and in comparison to the other Captain America movies, it may do fairly well. I could see it doing maybe close to or something close to Winter Soldier numbers. But the thing is, ticket prices, because Winter Soldier, that was like a decade ago, and ticket prices have gone up so much. Even if it makes the same amount in terms of dollars, that's still going to mean a significant drop in terms of tickets because people are paying so much more for tickets. But yeah, this thing it's doomed. it's just doomed to fail. Okay, The Gorge, romantic sci-fi action with Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller. It's on Apple TV, so I'm not even going to worry about that. Paddington in Peru, and kind of a kids movie. Not really seeing that. The Monkey, Stephen King horror adaptation with Longlegs director. That sounds interesting. That could maybe be decent. Legend of Ochi, fantasy adventure starring Finn Wolfhard and Willem Dafoe. I don't know anything about that. I'd have to look up and see what that is. Okay, in March, Mickey 17, the next Bong Joon-ho film with Robert Pattinson and Toni Collette. Don't really know about that. In the Lost Lands, George R.R. Martin adaptation starring Dave Bautista. Interesting. I don't know. If I saw a trailer and it was grabbing me, I know I might see that. Black Bag, spy thriller with Kate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender. Spy thriller. Kind of sounds like almost like a more serious take on Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where you got this married couple. They're both spies, and I think Fassbender, like he's basically ordered to assassinate his wife, or she's maybe going to assassinate him, or something like that. Um, it's the kind of movie. This is a movie that strikes me as this probably would have been a pretty big release a decade ago, or 12 years ago, or something like that. But I mean, Kate Blanchett, she's not the draw she used to be. And I'm not sure Fassbender is either, honestly. And honestly, Fassbender on his own, I'm not sure he was ever really that big a draw to begin with. Novocaine. Okay, I've seen trailers for this one. This is an action film. Jack Quaid plays a man who can't feel pain. And this also seems to fall in line with that whole sort of unassuming action hero role where he's this kind of normal guy who gets into to be an action hero, but he can't feel pain, so his body is getting horribly mutilated every step of the way. I don't know. It looked a little. I guess the thing I would say is, if I weren't in healthcare, I would probably be more inclined to like this. But being in the healthcare field, I know that actually not feeling pain is actually not such a great thing, because even if you don't feel injuries or wounds, they're still going to get infected. They're still going to fester, and if you don't feel the pain, you're less likely to get them treated. So I know it's like, this isn't necessarily a good thing, but again, coming from my perspective, I kind of have difficulty getting my head around that. If this was something I saw when I was younger, I probably would have really dug it. March 14th, Opus, a horror film with Ayo Edebiri, John Malkovich. Haven't seen Malkovich in anything. The Electric State, sci-fi action epic, Chris Pratt, Millie Bobby Brown on Netflix. I don't know. That sounds like it might be interesting. I haven't seen a trailer for it. Okay, Snow White. And I've said this before, early, like the first half of this year is going to be brutal for Disney, because it just seems like all their movies are poised to fail, because they're probably going to take a bath on Captain America, New World Order. This Snow White movie seems like it's poised to flop as well. And both those movies have gone through heavy like rewrites and heavy reshoots. They've spent a fortune on both these movies, and they're probably going to lose money. Thunderbolt's coming out in May. I don't see that being a big hit, particularly if Captain America doesn't do well, which it probably won't. The Alto Knights, a biographical crime drama with Robert De Niro playing two roles. Again, this is one of those movies several years ago I would have been probably jazzed about. If this had come out in the 90s or 2000s, I'd be all over it. But I don't know. De Niro has just been so out of control with his Trump derangement. He's just really kind of soured me. And I just don't really have any interest in seeing any of his stuff. March 28th, Woman in the Yard, psychological horror. Don't know anything about it. Okay, April 4th, the Minecraft movie. Live action Minecraft movie with Jack Black and Jason Momoa. This seems like it's largely kind of, geared at kids, which is cool. I don't really use Minecraft, so it's not a big deal to me. I will probably skip this. April 4th, Freaky Tales, action comedy with Pedro Pascal and Ben Mendelsohn. Okay, skip that. April 11th, The Amateur, action thriller starring Rami Malek. I've seen a trailer for this. It looked okay-ish. Rami Malek, he's like an analyst for the CIA. He has like a desk job at the CIA or something like that. And then there's like, I don't know, a terrorist attack or something, I think, and I think it's his brother gets killed. Was that it? Or maybe it was his wife or someone he loves gets killed. And then he goes to his bosses and like he wants to go after this international criminal that's responsible. And of course they're like, yeah, you're like a desk guy, you're not a field agent. No, you can't do this. So he leaves the CIA to become a vigilante basically and go after the guy himself. It looked okay in the trailers. I'll probably pass though. April 11th, Drop, a horror film from the Happy Death Day director. Don't know about that. Sinners, horror from Ryan Coogler, starring Michael B. Jordan. A lot of horror movies. I've seen that a lot. It seems like there's a lot of horror movies being made these days, probably because they can be made comparatively cheaply. And if a horror movie comes out and it hits, and people really like it, it can make good money. See, like that Megan movie, for example, or I mean, it's maybe kind of an unfair example because it's a pre-existing franchise, but that Halloween movie, the one from 2018, wasn't it? Which came out and it made just huge money, and it wasn't that expensive to make. But that's always been kind of the thing with horror movies, is that they can be done fairly cheaply, and if you hit on one, it can be a good moneymaker. Back in the 80s, the Friday the 13th movies, those things were just like an absolute gold mine for Paramount, because those things they sold lots of tickets and brought a lot of people into the theater. Okay, The Accountant 2, Ben Affleck sequel. April 25, Until Dawn, horror movie game adaptation. Okay, then May 2nd, Thunderbolts. Yeah, I don't expect this to do all that well. I'm sure this thing is hoping to kind of ride on Captain America's coattails, but I don't think that's going to work because Captain America is probably going to flop. I mean, it's basically like, let's take a bunch of characters that nobody really cares about and try and make a sort of knockoff Avengers, knockoff Suicide Squad movie about them. And again, DC already beat them to this idea, so people have already kind of seen this concept. And it's not like the Suicide Squad movies did all that well. The first one did, like okay-ish. I don't think it was a flop, but it was kind of disappointing. I'm sure they wanted it to do better. And then that sequel with James Gunn, that was just a total flop. Although granted, it did come out during COVID, I think, so that may have been part of the reason. But yeah, I don't see this thing being a hit. I don't know if it'll be a disaster like Captain America, but it's probably not gonna make money for them. All right, May 9th, Clown in a Cornfield, horror adaptation from Tucker and Dale versus Evil Director. Okay. Sounds like some kind of rural horror movie. Final Destination, Bloodline, supernatural horror sequel. Then May 23rd, Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning. Tom Cruise coming back as Dylan, or not Dylan Hunt, what's his name? Ethan Hunt. Dylan Hunt, that was Andromeda. And I was a little surprised that last Mission Impossible didn't do better, after what was it? Maverick was such a huge hit for Tom Cruise. It seemed like he had a lot of momentum going into this, and it seemed like this thing was poised to be a big hit. I mean, I thought it would be, but it flopped. It kind of went up against Barbenheimer and Barbenheimer, and it just kind of got rolled over. And I don't know, maybe people are just tired of it. I've never been a huge fan of the Mission Impossible films. I mean, they're fine. I don't have anything against them. It's not that I dislike them. But I don't know. I've just never been that into them for whatever reason. May 23rd, Lilo and Stitch, another live action Disney remake. It'll probably do well. Karate Kid Legends, another Karate Kid movie with Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio. Be interesting to see how that does because it's got Ralph Macchio's involvement. May 30th, Life of Chuck, another Stephen King adaptation starring Tom Hiddleston. I don't know anything about that. That'll be interesting. June 7th, Ballerina, John Wick spinoff with Anna de Armas. I like me some Anna de Armas. So I don't know. Maybe I'd catch it. I don't know. We'll see. And then June 13th, How to Train Your Dragon, another live action remake, this time from DreamWorks. All right, hold on a moment. Let me take a drink of water right quick. Okay. June 13th, Elio, a new Pixar animation set in space. I don't really know anything about it. June 20th, 28 years later, zombie sequel with Danny Boyle. I'll probably see that. I have seen 28 Days Later. I don't know. I don't remember I ever saw 28 Weeks Later or not. I may have. I'm not sure, though. If I have, I don't remember much. I might have to watch that again. June 27th, Megan 2.0 horror sequel. June 27th, F1 Formula One sports movie starring Brad Pitt. Be interesting to see how this does because it seems like, kind of going back to Kate Blanchett, it just seems like Brad Pitt's not the box office draw he used to be. Really, aside from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was a Tarantino movie, I kind of struggled to remember the last Brad Pitt movie that really was a hit and did really good business. Was it Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Angelina Jolie? I mean, it might have been. I'm not sure. Okay, July. Jurassic World Rebirth, more dinosaurs. This will probably come out and make a mint. Then July 11th, Superman, start of James Gunn's DCU. I'll definitely be seeing this. This and Fantastic Four are my most anticipated movies, frankly. I'm really kind of interested to see how these do. July 18th, I Know What You Did Last Summer sequel. Another one of these sequels that's coming out like decades after the first movie or the previous movie's original movie. And you're kind of like, what's the point now? July 25th, The Fantastic Four First Steps, MCU superhero movie with Pedro Pascal. And yeah, I mean, I remember being really surprised, um, thinking, why wouldn't you put this out on July 4th? July 4th, Fantastic Four, it just seems obvious. But that was before I realized that Jurassic World Rebirth is coming out the prior Wednesday. And it seems like in the MCU, seems like Marvel is afraid to take on Jurassic World, which kind of tells you something about how the MCU is not quite the juggernaut it used to be. Okay, August 1st, the Naked Gun reboot. So I guess this is that Naked Gun remake that's got Liam Neeson in it. I have mixed feelings about this one. I like Liam Neeson, and I'm pretty sure he can actually be pretty funny, and that he'll probably be pretty funny in this. But I don't know. Those original Naked Gun and Airplane movies, just the sensibilities were so different back then. With the way people are nowadays, everyone's so friggin' touchy and political correctness is such a big deal. It's hard to see how you can do justice to those original movies when, there was more of a kind of anything goes approach to comedy. August 8th, Freakier Friday, a Freaky Friday sequel with Lindsay Lohan and Jamie Lee Curtis. Pass. August 8th, Paul Thomas Anderson movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, who knows? We don't even have a title. August 15th, Nobody 2 sequel with Bob Odenkirk. Yeah, so this is kind of what I'm talking about. This is a good example of this current trend of taking sort of unassuming actors and putting them in action roles. And that first Nobody did pretty well. And this is another thing, kind of like with horror. I think one of the reasons you're seeing these is because these can be made fairly cheaply. And again, if you do one and it hits, it can be a pretty good moneymaker for you. August 15th, Mercy, a sci-fi thriller with Chris Pratt and Rebecca Ferguson. Don't really know anything about that one. So September, The Conjuring: Last Rites, the final Conjuring horror film. I know a lot of people love these Conjuring films. I mean, they're okay. I don't think they're that great, but I do like Patrick Wilson. Not so crazy about Vera Farmiga. Isn't that her name? Or am I remembering her name wrong? Maybe I'm naming her wrong. I'm not sure. But I mean, they're okay, but this will probably do well. September 19th, Him, sports horror produced by Jordan Peele. Okay. Another Saw movie. And then September 26th, The Bride, a romantic horror with Christian Bale playing Frankenstein's monster. That should be interesting. Now, October. Michael, a Michael Jackson biopic. Roofman drama based on a true story starring Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst. I haven't seen trailers for that, so I'm not sure what that's about. October 10th, Animal Friends, a live action animated road trip comedy with Ryan Reynolds and Jason Momoa. Huh. Not sure what to make of that one. Okay, October 10th, Tron Air, a sci-fi action sequel. And I'm glad they're doing more Tron. You know, I'm a fan of Tron, both movies that have been previously done. But I am concerned about this one, particularly because they're putting it in October. It just seems like a weird place to put a tentpole sci-fi film, you know? Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like this is a movie. If you had confidence in this movie, you would put it out in the summer or maybe at least during the holidays. And the fact they're putting it out in October, I don't know. That to me kind of makes me think they are not very confident with this movie. October 17th, A Black Phone 2. And that's another example. That first Black Phone movie, I guess that thing took off. October 17th, Good Fortune, comedy with Seth Rogen and Keanu Reeves. October 24th, Mortal Kombat 2, sequel to that last Mortal Kombat movie, which I have not seen. I should probably watch that. No, November 17th, Bergonia, a sci-fi comedy with Yorgos Lanthimos, whoever that is. November 7th, Predator Badlands, a new Predator sci-fi action movie, which is going to be in theaters, not on streaming. Interesting. I'll probably catch that. November 7th, a Running Man remake starring Glenn Powell. I'll probably see that. Now You See Me 3. I didn't know they were doing another one of these, another Now You See Me movie. November 21, Wicked for Good. I will skip that. November 26, Zootopia 2. That will probably do really well. That'll probably be a big hit for them. I'll skip it though. All right, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. That will probably also do really well. Avatar Fire and Ash, third Avatar movie from James Cameron. Yeah, I'll see it. Um, it'll probably be fine. I'm not the biggest fan of the Avatar films. Look, they're very well made. And, I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with them. I don't know why. I'm just not that jazzed about these movies for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. And honestly, Cameron has kind of really dropped in my estimation. Gregner says there are lots of movies based on Stephen King's work in 2025. Yeah, there's what, three or four Stephen King films. But again, I think that's in part because of this sort of Hollywood gravitating to horror so much because they're cheap to make. And with Stephen King, of course, you can do remakes, so you've got the name recognition on top of that. But between some of the things he said and that whole mess of Terminator Dark Fate, I'm just not the fan of Cameron that I used to be. I mean, he's still a damn good filmmaker, but I find it hard to be enthusiastic about his stuff now. Okay, Anaconda. Speaking of horror reboots, a horror reboot with Jack Black and Paul Rudd. Marty Supreme, sports comedy with Josh Safdie starring Timothy Chalamet. Wonder what that's about. Return of the Living Dead, horror sequel set 18 months after the original. Um, okay, I'm assuming that's a remake of Return of the Living Dead and not the original Return of the Living Dead that came out in the 80s. And then just also, and that was Christmas Day, and also on Christmas Day, The Housemaid, a Paul Feig thriller starring Sydney Sweeney and Amanda Seyfried. Yeah, I'll skip that. And then other movies without release dates. So Death of a Unicorn, comedy starring Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega. So I guess that's what that is. Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of the story. Yeah, that one I'm interested in seeing. That should be interesting. Happy Gilmore 2, a sequel on Netflix. In the Gray, a Guy Ritchie action film with Henry Cavill. That might be interesting. The Fetus, body horror movie. The Twits, animated Roald Dahl adaptation on Netflix. Thread, an Insidious Tale, Insidious horror spinoff. And Wake Up Dead Man, Ryan Johnson's Knives Out 3 with Daniel Craig on Netflix in theaters. I'll skip that. So yeah, not a whole lot I'm really all that jazzed about seeing. So I got to admit this, I didn't know about this Return of the Living Dead, so I may check that out. That I guess Anaconda, The Running Man, Predator, Badlands, maybe Mortal Kombat, I don't know, Tron. What else? Fantastic Four, Superman, Jurassic World, I guess. Thunderbolts. Um, Captain America. So what? That's about 10 movies. That's about it. And honestly, some of those I'm not that enthused. I'm just probably going to see it kind of because I'll need probably review them for my channel. So, kind of what you would expect. Lots of sequels, lots of remakes, just your standard stuff. They should pair up Frankenstein with the Bride movie. Yeah, 2 Frankenstein movies. Interesting. Hold on just a moment here. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on here. And the next story I'm going to take a look at here. And I'm sure you've probably heard about this one. This is from the Hollywood Reporter. Okay, this is from the Hollywood Reporter. Neil Gaiman faces new sexual assault allegations. And I normally don't cover stuff like this sort of kind of gossipy stuff, but he's a comic book writer. So I felt like, yeah, this kind of falls in my lane enough. I guess I'll go ahead and take a look at it. So if you don't know, um, a while back, what has this been, year or two ago, Neil Gaiman had some sexual harassment sort of accusations thrown his way. Not much happened with him, but now there's a bunch of new allegations, and these are much uglier and much more unpleasant. Now, I haven't read the actual story where in New York Magazine that sort of revealed this stuff, so I can say I honestly I don't know all the specifics, but uh, the upshot of it basically is he had sexual relations with a number of young ladies, generally in their younger 20s, even though he was, like in his 50s and like around 60. And it seems like he is an aficionado of BDSM and some other stuff. It seems like he has some interest in a bit of a scatological fetish. He seemed to like that sort of stuff. And he coerced or bullied or forced some of these young ladies to do some things, some very unpleasant and perhaps degrading things that they didn't really want to do. And now he's in trouble for it. New allegations of sexual misconduct and assault have surfaced against Neil Gaiman, the best-selling fantasy author whose books Good Omens, American Gods, and The Sandman have become TV series. On Monday, New York Magazine published a cover story titled "There Is No Safe Word," with writer Lila Shapiro's piece detailing new claims against Gaiman based on interviews with 8 women. This follows the July 2024 release of the Tortoise Media podcast Master, which reported earlier graphic accusations by 5 women against the celebrated genre writer. 4 of those women were among those who spoke for the New York Magazine piece. One of the claims comes from Scarlett Pavlovich, a former babysitter for Gaiman and his ex-wife Amanda Palmer, who described being sexually assaulted in February 2022 by Gaiman in New Zealand in a backyard bathtub. She also alleged Gaiman assaulted her under the blankets on a hotel room bed while his son played with an iPad in the same room. Gaiman's reps denied this claim, calling them false, not to mention deplorable, which is interesting, but I'll talk about that in a minute. A police report accusing Gaiman of a sexual assault was made in January 2023, but the investigation was eventually dropped. Another sexual misconduct claim detailed in the New York Magazine feature comes from Brenda, a pseudonym, who recalled meeting Gaiman in the 90s at a book signing. A few years later, she and Gaiman had a sexual encounter at a horror convention. Quote, he seemed to have a script, Brenda recounted. He wanted me to call him Master immediately. It was like he'd gone into this ritual that had nothing to do with me, unquote. Upcoming Gaiman book-to-screen adaptations include The Sandman Season 2 at Netflix, the Amazon miniseries Anansi Boys. Oh, that's going to be a show now, too. And the concluding 90-minute episode of Good Omens, also at Amazon. The Hollywood Reporter has reached out to Netflix and Amazon for comment on the status of those projects and also has reached out to Gaiman for direct comment on the magazine story allegations. Gaiman has also written screenplays for Neverwhere and Mirror Mask, penned an episode of Doctor Who, co-wrote Beowulf with Robert Zemeckis, and produced the film Stardust. Gaiman, via his representatives, told the New York Magazine he and the women had engaged in, quote, consensual encounters, unquote. And on Tuesday, the day after the article was published, he wrote a response on his personal blog. Quote, as I read through this latest collection of accounts, there are moments I half recognize and moments I don't. Descriptions of things that happened sitting beside things that emphatically did not happen. I'm far from a perfect person, but I have never engaged in non-consensual sexual activity with anyone, ever, Gaiman wrote. I went back to read the messages I exchanged with the women around and following the occasions that have subsequently been reported as being abusive. These messages read now as they did when I received them, of 2 people enjoying entirely consensual sexual relationships and wanting to see one another again. At the time I was in those relationships, they seemed positive and happy on both sides, unquote. Added the author, and I also realized looking through them years later that I could and should have done so much better. I was emotionally unavailable while being sexually available, self-focused, and not as thoughtful as I could or should have been. Okay. So, yes, not surprisingly, he has a different view of these events. What I do find interesting about this is him and his agent, through his agent, basically saying these things aren't true, you know, because back when the whole hashtag Me Too thing took off back in, what was that, 2017, 2018? It was, I think it was 2017, but it might have been 2018. In the, I think in like the late summer, early fall, when that really kind of took off, when that article exposed Harvey Weinstein and all that. He was one of those guys that was out there saying, "Oh, hey, we have to believe women. You gotta, when women make these accusations, you gotta take them seriously. You gotta believe them, and not question their point of view and all that." And of course, now that it's him, of course, he's like, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't what happened." So, um, look, I don't know, and like I said, I haven't read the specifics, so I'm not really gonna come down on it. But it seems like, after that whole Harvey Weinstein story broke, there were a number of women coming out and talking about some of the things that had happened to them with other men, particularly with powerful men in Hollywood, which was it. I think it was Dr. Dre. I think there were like a few women who came out, and because he was one of those guys saying, "Well, no, not me," and then when I haven't done this sort of thing, and then women came out and said, "Yeah, yeah, you have." And it seems like what the happens in these situations sometimes is the guy, because he's rich, famous, and powerful, just kind of assumes the woman is going to be open to having a relationship with him, and he makes a move, and she, because she is maybe afraid to say no, or because she's dazzled by his fame and all that, or maybe is just kind of freaked out, isn't sure what to do, and then she just sort of goes along with it. And, and doesn't say, and if she isn't there struggling or resisting and saying, no, stop, and the guy's, going to work, what's the guy supposed to think? Then you kind of think that, okay, well, she's into it too. And then after the fact, they go, oh, maybe this isn't what I wanted. And it seems like maybe that's the case here too. I don't know. Um, you know, but it's not looking good for him. And as some other people have noted, like I think Carrie on an erotic channel, of course, who was involved in the comic industry for several years, said that was it? I think it was on Friday Night Tights that this was it's like with Weinstein in Hollywood. This was an open secret. Everyone knew he was doing this stuff. Everyone knew he was like this. Everyone knew this was going on. But he was protected. He was protected by the, I will call it what, comic book media, which, it's barely, I wouldn't even call them journalists, but they basically protected this guy and wouldn't report on it. Just like the Hollywood media protected Weinstein for several years. And that's part of the reason, why a lot of these guys spout all this sort of, they claim to be male feminists, and they spout all the usual slogans, and basically take the side of, oh yeah, you need to believe women, and they're leftist anyway, but they say this stuff in part because they know as long as they play the role and they say all the right things, the media will protect them. Bill Clinton's a perfect example. I mean, that guy, he's got a laundry list of women who have accused him of everything from groping them to outright grape, but the media protected him, and the or not Republic, but Democrats protected him, and feminists protected him and covered for him for years because he was a lefty, he was a Democrat, and he said all the right things, and they wanted him in office so he would pass leftist legislation, and stuff like that. So they know that spouting all this feminist rhetoric, it's a get out of jail free card, basically, because then you can do this stuff and the media will protect you, all the while claiming, how much they believe women or how much it's important to respect women and all this stuff. I mean, look at how they freaked out over Trump, and he has far fewer accusations and far less credible accusations about that stuff against him than Bill Clinton does. But, they protect Clinton and they go after him with everything they got. Not to get all off on that rail, but we'll go ahead and move on. Now, another story this week, and this one's kind of unfortunate, kind of sad. David Lynch passed away this week. Of course, the famous kind of visionary director. And again, this is from the Hollywood Reporter. David Lynch, auteur drawn to the dark and dreamlike, dies at 78. David Lynch, the writer-director whose films and TV series included Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and Twin Peaks, portrayed a seemingly bucolic America only to reveal it as teeming with the mysterious and macabre, has died. He was 78. It is with deep regret that we, his family, announce the passing of the man and the artist David Lynch. We would appreciate some privacy at this time. There's a big hole in the world now that he's no longer with us. But as he would say, keep your eye on the donut and not on the hole. It's a beautiful day with golden sunshine and blue skies all the way. In August, he revealed that he was suffering from emphysema after many years of smoking and that he couldn't leave home for fear that he would get COVID-19. Nobody who saw Lynch's works could mistake them for anyone else's. Unlike other leading auteurs, he didn't belong to a movement or fit easily into a genre. While his pictures echoed the mindset of a Louis Buñuel or Buñuel, I'm not sure how you say that, or a Salvador Dali, critic Pauline Kael called him, quote, the first populist surrealist, and were influenced by such film noir landmarks as Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard. They were sui generis. His creations, in fact, appeared timeless, strangely disconnected from any particular era or place, which made them all the more startling and disturbing. These were horror stories that mixed the monstrous with the mundane, that emerged from a landscape of dreams and nightmares, their happy endings doing nothing to erase the discomfort they left behind. They were as perplexing as any drawing of M.C. Escher, as haunting as any grim fairy tale, only far harder to decipher, which sometimes led skeptics to wonder whether even Lynch had the key to unlocking them. Few doubted the power of his vision and imagination, though naysayers questioned his logical thread. While the filmmaker could occasionally descend into self-parody, critics groups included his major pictures on lists of the most important movies of the past century. In a 2012 poll of nearly 900 experts, Sight and Sound magazine ranked Mulholland Drive at number 28 and Blue Velvet at number 69. There was, however, a notable discrepancy between Lynch's international standing and his domestic reputation. None of his films is featured in the American Film Institute's most recent ranking of the 100 greatest movies, published in 2007. That kind of surprises me that he has nothing on that list. That's a little surprising. Nor was the Academy always supportive. Nominated for 4 Oscars as director for Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and 1980's The Elephant Man, which also garnered him an adapted screenplay nom, Lynch was finally accorded an honorary Academy Award in 2019. Yeah, I mean, The Elephant Man is not on the list of 100 greatest films. I mean, that kind of surprises me. Because I would probably rank that as his best film. Or at least it's the one I probably respect and admire the most. Um, well, actually, honestly, the one I like the most is probably his Dune movie, but even he hates that movie, and I'm not going to sit here and say it's necessarily like one of the 100 greatest movies ever made. But The Elephant Man, or I mean, really, like the only other modern American filmmaker to rank above him on the Sight and Sound list, Francis Ford Coppola, whose Apocalypse Now ranked 14th, while Godfather came in 21st. Lynch was that rarity in Hollywood, an artist who eventually turned his back on the art form he had mastered. While he revisited his celebrated 1990 to 91 ABC miniseries Twin Peaks with 2017's Twin Peaks reboot for Showtime, his filmic output sputtered in the final decades and seemed to halt for lengthy stretches following his last feature, Inland Empire. Yeah, I didn't watch that Twin Peaks reboot. It just seemed like one of those things that was just bound to fail. And it was, kind of right around the time that Hollywood was in the throes of Trump derangement, and I was just not that enthusiastic. It's like that X-Files reboot. I was just like, there's just no way this is going to be good. It's bound to disappoint, so I skipped it. Later in his life, Lynch drew more attention for a 17-minute short, 2017's What Did Jack Do, in which he played a detective interrogating a monkey, than for anything else he had done recently on film. That endeavor seemed as much a sly joke as an artistic statement. Instead, after the panned Inland Empire, he devoted himself to his paintings and interests that had preceded film, and two other primary endeavors: a coffee making business and transcendental meditation, the Buddhist practice he had embraced in his late 20s. Quote, everything in me changed when I started meditating, he reflected in his unusual 2018 memoir, Room to Dream, which alternated third person and first person chapters. Within 2 weeks of starting, Peggy, his first wife, Peggy Lynch, comes to me and says, your anger, where did it go? David Keith Lynch was born in Missoula, Montana on January 20th, 1946. His father, Donald, was a research scientist, and his mother, Edwina, an English teacher. Their work led them to move frequently from Montana to Idaho to Washington State to Virginia. Never a stellar student, Lynch was shaped by the Boy Scouts, and in many years, many of those who knew him expressed surprise at the contradiction between his mild manners and the eruptions of violence and profanity in his art. Anyone searching to explain Lynch's work through his upbringing would have trouble. My parents were so loving and good, he wrote in his memoir. They'd had good parents too, and everybody loved my parents. They were just fair. He added that, quote, a lot of who we are is just set when we get here. They call it the wheel of birth and death, and I believe we've been around many, many times, unquote. After dropping out of several colleges, including Boston School of the Museum of Fine Arts and New York Copper Union, Lynch was working as an artist and printmaker in 1966 when he made his first film, the 4-minute short Six Men Getting Sick Six Times. That and other early efforts led him to win a place at the AFI, which had just opened a Los Angeles-based conservatory, which would subsequently rank among America's finest film schools. And AFI is American Film Institute, I believe. Enrolled alongside an unrivaled collection of students that also included Terrence Malick and Paul Schrader, Lynch spent the next several years making his first feature, Eraserhead, a dystopian vision shot in black and white. Adored and abhorred in equal measure, the movie became a cult favorite, playing at midnight screenings in art houses across the country. No less a favorite than Stanley Kubrick proclaimed it one of his favorite films. And I have to admit, I have never seen Eraserhead. I know at one point I was thinking I needed to see it, and then I don't know, I just never did. Eraserhead and probably landed Lynch his first feature proper, The Elephant Man, when Mel Brooks, its equally improbable producer, fell in love with the director's esoteric work. Based on the true story of Joseph Merrick, renamed John Merrick in the picture, Elephant Man told the story of a grotesquely deformed 19th century freak show performer played by John Hurt, who's discovered and cared for by an enlightened surgeon, Anthony Hopkins. Lynch was still new to the profession of director and quirky enough that at one point the mercurial Hopkins allegedly tried to have him fired. Quote, Hopkins wasn't openly hostile, but he was aloof, remembered producer Jonathan Sanger. Quote, and one day he called me into his dressing room and said, why is this guy getting to direct a movie? What has he done? He did one little movie. I don't understand this, unquote. When Hopkins flew at Lynch and demanded, quote, just tell me what you want, Lynch recalled that this anger comes at me in a way that's happened just a couple of times in my life. It rose up like you can't fucking believe. I can't even imitate the way I was yelling because I hurt my voice. I screamed some stuff at him, then screamed what I wanted him to do. And actress Wendy Hiller turns to Tony and quietly says, I would do what he says. On-set difficulties were forgotten when the movie proved a terrific critical hit, earning 8 Oscar nominations, though it failed to win a single one. Yeah, that's ridiculous. What's 1980. You know what? I think that's the year that Chariots of Fire won Best Picture. I think 1980. Let me check that. 1980 Academy Best Picture. Oh no, it was Kramer versus Kramer won that year. Okay, well that's probably why, because Kramer versus Kramer was yeah, I remember that winning a lot of awards because it won Best Picture, and I think Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep both won. So yeah, I guess it got shut out because of that. I would say that Elephant Man. I like Elephant Man more than Kramer versus Kramer, but that's me. That was as close to mainstream Hollywood acceptance as Lynch would ever get. He was burned by his next venture, a big budget adaptation of Frank Herbert's sci fi novel Dune. After a year and a half of production in Mexico, editing got underway in Los Angeles. Quote, "It was horrible, just horrible," he explained. "It was like a nightmare that was being done to the film to make this 2 hour and 17-minute running time that was required. Things were truncated and whispered voiceovers were added because everybody thought audiences wouldn't understand what was going on." Which, to be fair, they probably wouldn't have. Lynch didn't so much blame producer Dino De Laurentiis as himself. Quote, "I always knew Dino had final cut on Dune," he wrote. "And because of that, I started selling out before we even started shooting. It was pathetic, is what it was, but it was the only way I could survive." The movie was panned by critics when it opened in 1984 and seemed likely to bring a sudden end to Lynch's meteoric rise, only for him to rebound or be redeemed by his fourth feature, Blue Velvet. Taking its title from the classic Bobby Vinton song Blue Velvet used one of Lynch's favorite narrative tropes, the detective story, to follow a naive young man, Kyle MacLachlan, as he sets out on a voyage of discovery triggered by a cut off ear. His exploration leads him to a sexually abused lounge singer, Isabella Rossellini, cast after Helen Mirren turned down the role, and the deadly, perverse, and menacing thug who keeps her under his control, played by Dennis Hopper. Yeah, that's sort of the most famous scene, of course, is that scene where Hopper's got the nitrous oxide or whatever, and he's huffing the laughing gas and slapping her around. Hopper's villain, Frank Booth, a man driven to paroxysms of sexually fueled rage, made all the more terrifying by the oxygen mask with which he covers his face, heightening his desires as he chokes off his air supply, remaining arguably the most petrifying bad guy ever to grace an American film, on the same iconic level as Hopkins' own Hannibal Lecter in the more mainstream horror thriller Silence of the Lambs. No, I mean, it's not even close to being on the same level as Hannibal. I mean, give me a break. When Hopper first discussed the part, he told Lynch, "I had to play Frank Booth because I am Frank Booth," answered Lynch. "That's good news and bad news." But it wasn't just Hopper who made this movie so memorable. It was also the director's sheer skill at narrative, not least when he has his overcurious lead break into the singer's home and hide in her closet, where his voyeurism matches the director's own, only to be upended when the singer, whom he has observed naked, holds him at knife point and makes him disrobe too. This was the kind of virtuoso filmmaking Lynch had never displayed before and perhaps never would again, with the arguable exception of Mulholland Drive. And it made stars of MacLachlan, Rossellini, and Laura Dern as MacLachlan's wholesome girlfriend, and became the most talked about movie of '86. The New York Times' Janet Maslin called it an instant cult classic. With Eraserhead, Elephant Man, and Dune to his credit, Mr. Lynch has already established his beachhead inside the realm of the bizarre, but this latest venture takes him a lot further. Kinkiness is its salient quality, but Blue Velvet has deadpan humor too, as well as a straight arrow side that makes its eccentricity all the crazier. There's no mistaking the exhilarating fact that it's one of a kind. That one of a kindness may have won plaudits, but it also led to a Puritan backlash, especially for Rossellini, who is lambasted for taking the kind of role that would have shamed her mother, Ingrid Bergman. An ironic critique given that Bergman had been equally condemned when she left her husband and ran off with Roberto Rossellini. Adding to the layers of irony, Lynch in turn left his own wife, Mary Fisk, for Rossellini, with whom he would have a years-long liaison. Married 4 times, he is survived by his last wife, Emily Stoffel, and 4 children, including filmmaker Jennifer Lynch. Lynch's foray into television with Twin Peaks proved an even greater sensation. The horror mystery once more centered on a detective played by McLaughlin, who teams with a local sheriff, played by Michael Ontkean, to investigate the murder of homecoming queen Laura Palmer, played by Shara Lee. Its spooky view of the fictional eponymous town in Washington was rendered all the more haunting by Angelo Badalamenti's score, and the mysteries upon mysteries of the plot generated endless speculation and some irritation among fans. Yeah, I mean, looking back now, it's hard to underplay how much of a sensation that Twin Peaks was when it came out. It was one of those things. Um, who killed Laura Palmer was kind of like the biggest cliffhanger or biggest mystery in TV since who shot JR, which had been a decade earlier. And as much as I was always kind of reluctant to get too swept up in the hype because I knew right from the start, like, they can only play this out for so long. I mean, how's this going to be a TV series? Because eventually people are going to get tired. One of two things is going to happen. They're ever just going to keep dragging this out and people are going to lose interest and move on, or they're going to reveal the mystery. And after that, people will lose interest and move on. And, there was a lot of, I guess you would call it the equivalent of clickbait these days, because at the end of every episode it seemed like they would kind of tease that next week the killer revealed, or next week the truth about who killed Laura Palmer, and then you'd watch it and then it wouldn't happen. Oh wow, I'm over an hour already. I didn't realize that. Hold on a moment. Okay. While often cited as one of the greatest TV shows of all time, Twin Peaks lost steam when Lynch left in the middle of the series to shoot Wild at Heart, the 1990 Cam Palme d'Or winner that starred Dern and Rossellini alongside Nicolas Cage. And he later blamed season two's weakness on his relative lack of involvement compared to that of co-creator Mark Frost. Quote, Mark got the recognition he wanted with the second season when he was sort of in charge, said agent turned executive Tony Krantz. David wasn't happy with the scripts, though, and there were storylines he hadn't pre-approved. It was like, hey, wait a minute, you're misperceiving the dream that made the first season of Twin Peaks so great. You're mimicking and making faux versions of them. The series was canceled in its second season. Still, Lynch revisited it many times, not just with a feature, 1992's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, but also the 2017 series with little critical or commercial success. Twin Peaks marked both the apogee of Lynch's career as a popular influencer and a turning point in his ability to tap into the zeitgeist. Nothing he did again had quite the same ripple effect through society, including his two immediate follow-up features, Lost Highway and The Straight Story. The former never caught on with audiences who found his story incoherent, while the latter, A Road Trip starring Richard Farnsworth, was better received critically but also failed financially, despite landing its lead an Oscar nomination. Those who had begun to find Lynch's work gimmicky were shocked and even awed when he leapt back with the film many consider his masterpiece, or at least Blue Velvet's equal, Mulholland Drive. Starring Naomi Watts as a budding actress who's newly arrived in Los Angeles, the 146-minute drama follows her as she forms a friendship with another young woman, Laura Elena Herring, who has become an amnesiac following a horrific car accident that's left her for dead. The project was something of a miracle, having begun as another TV series that was killed by ABC. But it was only after the extraordinary efforts of Lynch's friend, executive producer Pierre Edelman, that the venture was resuscitated a year and a half later after the pilot was filmed in spring of 1999. That protracted break may have helped Lynch gather his thoughts. He managed to cobble together his original cast and shoot an additional 18 pages, rounding out the plot and giving his mystery a coherence that Twin Peaks had lacked. Again, the director used his favorite film structure, an investigation of sorts, as the two women attempt to learn about the amnesiac's mysterious past, leading them into an ever stranger world by thugs, murderers, singers, and filmmakers, including Justin Theroux in a spectacular turn as a narcissistic director. If the movie at times teetered on the edge of the ridiculous with some strangely over the top acting, Lynch left no doubt about its deliberateness. That was made clear in a dazzling scene within a scene when Watts auditions for a role in a bad movie, one that Lynch staged to be not only dramatically mesmerizing but also heart-stoppingly real. What is real? What is false? What is imagined? What is true? What is acted? What is genuine? These were just some of the questions Lynch posed in his most artistically and philosophically complex work, one that has been the subject of speculation ever since. When I saw Mulholland Drive the first time, Herring once observed, I thought it was the story of Hollywood dreams, illusion, and obsession. It touches on the idea that nothing is quite as it seems, especially the idea of being a Hollywood movie star. The second and third time I saw it, I thought it dealt with identity. Do we know who we are? And then I kept seeing different things in it. There's no right or wrong to what someone takes away from it or what they think the film is really about. It's a movie that makes you continuously ponder and makes you question. I've heard over and over, this is a movie that I'll see again, or this is a movie you've got to see again. It intrigues you. You want to get it, but I don't think it's a movie to be gotten. It's achieved its goal if it makes you ask questions. Okay, and it kind of ends there. And that was really the last really significant thing he did. Um, I mean, I wasn't the hugest fan of Lynch. Like I say, I like some of his stuff. I really liked The Elephant Man. I really liked Dune. And, I did enjoy Twin Peaks for a while, but it did kind of get old to me. Um, his other stuff, I think I've seen Blue Velvet. And it's an interesting movie. I wouldn't say I really like it, but his work is, if nothing else, his work is definitely not boring. I will say that. And yeah, it's a shame he's gone. If nothing else, at least he was had a distinct vision. And when so much of what's being made in Hollywood now just feels very kind of assembly line, just kind of stuff being churned out, content that's just being churned out. There aren't many filmmakers like that anymore. Who is there? Christopher Nolan. He definitely is one of them. Beyond him, I'm not really sure. Matthew Reeves, maybe, yeah. Okay, but we'll move on here. Man, okay. I'll probably wrap this up at an hour and a half. I didn't realize I would be this long. So, what, maybe one or two more stories? Okay, here's another interesting one. And again, this is one I normally wouldn't touch on, but considering who's involved, I figured, what the heck. And it was kind of a slow week as far as kind of really big stories anyway. So, again, The Hollywood Reporter. Justin Baldoni files $400 million lawsuit against Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds over alleged smear campaign. A legal showdown continues to erupt over misconduct allegations in the filming of It Ends With Us, with Justin Baldoni suing Blake Lively and her husband Ryan Reynolds for orchestrating a campaign to smear him. Baldoni, in a lawsuit filed in New York federal court on Thursday, alleges extortion, defamation, and claims related to breach of contract, among several others. He's joined by his film studio, Wayfarer, and its chief executive, Jamie Heath, and their public relations representatives, Melissa Nathan and Jennifer Abel. They seek at least $400 million. Also named in the lawsuit, Reynolds and Leslie Sloan, the actress's public relations representative of Vision PR, who didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. In a statement, Brian Friedman, Baldoni's lawyer, said the lawsuit is based on an overwhelming amount of untampered evidence detailing Blake Lively and her team's duplicitous attempt to destroy Justin Baldoni, his team, and their respective companies by disseminating grossly edited, unsubstantiated, new and doctored information to the media, unquote. He added, it is clear based on our own all out willingness to provide all complete text messages, emails, video footage, and other documentary evidence that was shared between the parties in real time that this is a battle she will not win and will certainly regret. The filing of the lawsuit follows Lively suing Baldoni and his public relations team for allegedly marshaling a sophisticated, multi-tiered plan to undermine her reputation in retaliation for speaking up about sexual misconduct on the set of the film. The same day that legal action was initiated last month, Baldoni sued the New York Times for allegedly conspiring with Lively's public relations team to advance an unverified and self-serving narrative while ignoring evidence that contradicted her claims. In a statement later Thursday, Lively's legal team responded and called the situation an age-old story. Quote, a woman speaks up with concrete evidence of sexual harassment and retaliation, and the abuser attempts to turn the tables on the victim. This is what experts call DARVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender. The statement continued, Lively is represented by Minot, Phelps, and Phillips, and Wilkie Farr and Gallagher. Among the many reasons the legal drama has fascinated Hollywood is the tangling web of relationships between the major players in the litigation. Shortly after cutting ties with Baldoni, WME, which also represents Lively and her megastar husband Reynolds, released a statement insisting that the married stars didn't pressure the agent to drop him. Baldoni challenges the denial from WME and offers a clashing account of events. He says in the complaint that, quote, he received word that during the premiere of his movie Deadpool and Wolverine, Reynolds approached Baldoni's agency, namely an executive of WME, and expressed his deep disdain for Baldoni, suggesting the agency was working with a, quote, sexual predator, a phrase that uncoincidentally later appeared in the press and at a later date demanded that the agent drop him. This is slightly different than the account in the lawsuit against the Times, which stated Reynolds approached Baldoni's agent at the premiere. WME maintained that Baldoni's agent was not at the premiere and that Reynolds didn't pressure the agent to drop Baldoni. In Baldoni's filing, there is a claim that Reynolds pressured Baldoni's agent at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere. This is not true, the agency said in a statement at the time. Quote, Baldoni's former representative was not at the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, nor was there any pressure from Reynolds or Lively at any time to drop Baldoni as a client. The lawsuit details calculated maneuvering behind the scenes of the movie. Wayfair says it was blindsided when Lively, upon conclusion of last year's strikes, refused to return to production without the company agreeing to a 17-point list of demands that implied misconduct during filming. Lively leveraged her demands, the lawsuit claims, to seize control of the movie, ultimately getting her own cut of the film delivered and a producer credit. At her command, Baldoni was ousted from all marketing and promotional efforts, according to the complaint. When her promotional efforts allegedly backfired and resulted in public backlash, Lively directed Sloan, her publicist, to propagate false stories portraying Baldoni as a sexual predator, the lawsuit says. The lawsuit also offers details behind the split between Stephanie Jones, founder of JonesWorks, and the PR firm for Wayfair and Baldoni, and Abel, Jones's right-hand partner who oversaw the company's Los Angeles office. It claims Jones aimed to undercut Abel after she announced a decision earlier to form her own company. Jones's behavior grew more and more bizarre as she lashed out at loyal clients like Wayfair in rage-filled rants, and veered away from professional experience and strategy when making critical decisions affecting JonesWorks clients, the complaint states. Quote, after a final outburst against Wayfair in which he outright refused to comply with their direct instructions, Wayfair had no choice but to cut ties with Jones and JonesWorks rather than leave their public image in the hands of what appeared to be an out-of-control Jones, whose actions were not aligned with Wayfair and Baldoni's worldview and wishes. Per the lawsuit, Jones took Abel's phone upon her departure and mined it for messages to be used as legal ammo without necessary context to concoct a false narrative that Lively was the target of a smear campaign initiated by Baldoni and his team. In a statement, Nathan and Abel, who said they've been subject to death threats, said Lively and her team, quote, initiated this smear campaign in the media for the sole intention of gaining undeserved public sympathy for her own missteps. They added, quote, 5 months ago, Ms. Lively chose to promote a film against domestic violence in a way that caused instant negative and organic backlash due to her own highly publicized actions. Instead of accepting responsibility, she decided to cruelly blame us. This malicious attack on private individuals by Ms. Lively and her team, in which they chose to spoon feed the New York Times with doctored, out of context, and edited text messages in an effort to paint herself as a victim, set off a chain of events that has been harmful beyond measure. Whew. Yeah, quite a mess. Um, I mean, like, I have no idea who's telling the truth and who isn't. What I do know is this probably would have been an uphill battle for Baldoni to win in the first place, but now that now that Ryan Reynolds has been in a billion-dollar film and is one of the hottest names in Hollywood, my guess is good luck. Whatever the reality may be, my guess is Baldoni's going to be disappointed unless they've got some just absolute ironclad evidence that prove he's telling the truth. If it comes down to a he said, she said thing, which it probably will, then my guess is he's not gonna win this. Okay, 125. Okay, I guess I got time for one more, and then I'll wrap it up here. Now this is let's see, this is from Screen Rant. This could be bloody. What does Diamond's bankruptcy mean for the future of comics? After months of red flags, the comic industry is reeling from the announcement that Diamond Comic Distributors has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy relief. While no longer the only distributor, Diamond is and has been the biggest distributor in the comics direct market since the 90s. If the company can recover, these challenges might lead to a healthier comics industry, but it would be catastrophic for comic book retailers. Diamond, which was virtually the sole distributor of comics in the US market for over 20 years, has been struggling for the last 5 years, and in late 2024, it started missing shipping dates. Given that digital comics are available on the same day as print titles, the delays hurt not just Diamond sales, but also comic retailers as well, with hardcore fans turning to the internet to read their comics to avoid being spoiled. In December 2024, Diamond closed a distribution center, leading to further delays and an uptick in retailer complaints about damaged books. In mid January 2025, Diamond filed for bankruptcy, saying the company would be restructured. In the best case scenario, the industry emerges a lot more stable now that the long standing distribution monopoly has been broken up. If Diamond can successfully restructure and come out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, not only would the company be stronger, but it's likely that the industry as a whole would benefit from the increased competition that has been seen in the last few years. Hold on just a moment. Okay. Um, Diamond's monopoly is already broken, so the biggest question is what will happen to the company and, importantly, its inventory. Unfortunately, there's also another possible outcome that seems frighteningly plausible. This could be bloody when veteran comics retailer anonymously told Screen Rant. If Diamond can't exit Chapter 11 and has to move to Chapter 7 bankruptcy, it would be forced to liquidate its assets. While some of that stock would be returned to publishers, such a liquidation would likely mean hundreds of thousands of comics and graphic novels being sent to Ollie's and Barnes& and Noble at deep discounts, potentially harming retailers who rely on trade collections to break even. Quote, this could be bloody when veteran comics retailer anonymously told Screen Rant, like all stores undercut with unsold Diamond inventory bloody. He added, I'm rooting for Diamonds for a litany of reasons. During the during the speculation boom of the 90s, a number of comics distributors were in the direct market. After the bubble burst in 95, many distributors closed and Diamond acquired the rest, creating a virtual monopoly. That monopoly held up more or less until 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns began. Diamond, a fairly small operation in spite of its outsized role in comics, closed its doors, leaving comics in the lurch. Larger distributors rushed in to save the day, but when the lockdown ended, they didn't leave the industry behind. One comparison could be the way the manga market was ravaged after Media Play's collapse in 2010. Media Play, a division of Musicland, was a trailblazer in the U.S. manga and anime market. While it was instrumental in introducing young Americans to the medium, the company also held an enormous amount of manga inventory at the time of its closure. At the time, publishers panicked, worrying that the stock would be sold at a discount, undermining demand for full price merchandise. Unfortunately, their other option was to take returns and refund their biggest American buyer. In an email to retailers, Diamond President Chuck Parker said that the restructuring will, quote, likely include the sale of key assets, unquote, with Universal Distribution interested in taking on Alliance Game Distributors. Diamond UK, Diamond Select Toys, and Collectible Grading Authority are all reportedly on the table, according to Business Wire, who first reported the bankruptcy. The company should be able to continue operating thanks to $41 million in debtor in possession financing from JP Morgan Chase, which will be used to meet current and future obligations during the restructuring. So they're probably going to survive this, more than likely. Marvel's Ultimate line of comics and DC's new Absolute Universe delivered what I think are the best jumping on points for new comic readers in years. By all appearances, Diamond's plan is to focus on its energies on the comic market, shoring up its core business of comics distribution and shedding some of the ancillary businesses it has generated and acquired along the way. Obviously, without the monopoly it still previously held in the market, that core business is facing more competition than any time in recent memory. Still, Diamond has strong relationships with retailers and publishers, including a number of comic companies like the still growing Distillery, with whom Diamond still has exclusive distribution deals. Some comic retailers are already moving as many of their orders as possible away from Diamond, though Lunar, its biggest competitor in the direct market, has also had its share of shipping delays. Hold on a moment. Okay. The result was a sluggish December for many retailers who rely on new releases to get readers in the door. Of course, the graphic novels and collected editions would be most impacted if Diamond was unable to pull out of its slump. Retailers are certainly hoping for the best for Diamond, but it's hardly surprising that so many have expressed frustration, outrage, or a desire to change its distributor entirely. Given the potentially damaging outcomes they face if Diamond Comics distributors were to fail, it's very likely that retailers will continue to support the distributor. Retailers have a number of options on the table for comics wholesale now, and there's also a replacement for Diamond's book place in the book market. Ingram, one of the biggest media distributors in North America, has entered into the direct market. Now, comic shops can order product like movie tie-in books and other non-comics titles from Ingram and get them delivered at the same time as Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Of course, given the potentially damaging outcomes they face if Diamond Comics distributors were to fail, it's very likely that retailers will continue to support the distributor, at least in the short term. So, yeah, I mean, it's not surprising that this has happened. In fact, one could argue it's surprising it didn't happen sooner, considering how woeful the direct comic book market has been. But from the sound of this article, I'm guessing that Diamond is going to survive this and they're not going to go away. But clearly, some change is going to have to happen. And what that will involve, I don't know. And like I say, the retailers are kind of stuck because I'm sure a lot of them are fed up with Diamond and would like to be rid of Diamond. But if Diamond goes away, then you can't just assume that every others will take up their spots, although they probably would. I don't know. But it just leaves retailers in a really tough spot. And as far as what to do, and my guess is most of them will just keep doing what they're doing and hoping for the best. What else can they really do? Okay, so that will do it for this week, I guess. Um, please do like the stream before you leave. I always forget to say that at the outset of the stream. And please do sub to the channel and, maybe check out some of my other videos before you leave. I did recently post a new video a top 5 list of what I think would be the best Marvel villains for Batman. If these Marvel villains were actually over at DC, seems to be doing pretty well. Last I looked, I think it was at about 350 views. Doing okay. And I do plan to do a series of those. I'll probably do a Superman video along similar lines in the next week or two, hopefully. And what else is coming? So I'll do another Trek Talk live stream on Tuesday at 5, probably, looking at Operation Annihilate from the original Star Trek series. That's the final episode of the first season. And I probably will not, excuse me a moment here. Okay. I probably will not stream on Sunday next week because I will have my National Guard drill, so I'll be with my unit. But then will be the week after that. I'll be back, so 2 weeks before another Sunday live stream. Again, thanks to those who watch the stream and who will catch it on a rewatch. And again, please like it if you would and sub to the channel. And I will see you folks, I guess, Tuesday evening. Till then, have a good night.